So again, the question comes down to, well, maybe we can use GDP to say, answer questions like, what the hell? Wait 90 seconds for the projectors to cool down and then try selecting a source again. Okay, so the question is, where would we rather live? And the answer most people will say is you'd much rather live in Australia. Right? Solomon Islands has great beachfront. And actually, life there is pretty cheap. Right? Because you can buy food for almost no cost. What's the problems with living in an island paradise, though? Why don't Australians hop on rafts and paddle over to Solomon Islands? Yeah, one problem is there's no jobs. What else? Sorry? Education, yes. I mean, they're relatively poor. They're very poor public sector services. So if you value things like education or health, if you're worried about getting sick, perhaps, you don't want to get sick in a place like that. You'd most certainly want to get sick rather in Australia than you would in Solomon Islands. And of course, if you guys did travel overseas and got sick in the Solomon Islands, what would be the first thing that our embassy would do? If you're really, really sick, they'd pop you on a plane and you'd be in Brisbane in 2 hours. Oops. 12 seconds, 11 seconds. What else was I going to say? Now, so Australia has a much larger per capita gross national income, so that might be something that we're considering. But should that be? So what's the problem, though, with focusing just on this gross national income figure? I mean, is that the whole story? Because one of the problems is that this gross national income doesn't represent the whole thing. Remember, it's the market value. Well, that means that we're going around and we're adding up the values of everything. If the prices of things in one place are a lot more expensive than the prices of things in other places, then we're naturally going to see that the gross national income is higher. But that's simply because everything costs a lot more in Australia. So, you know, if you're thinking about, say, comparing the cost of living between Bathurst and Sydney, right? You know, $500,000 would buy you a nice apartment somewhere in a nice part of eastern Sydney. Take that $500,000 and put it into a Bathurst property, and what would you get? You get a 3 or 4 bedroom house with a relatively large lot, with 3 or 4 bathrooms and 2 garages. Right? So the cost of living also matters. So maybe gross national income isn't the only thing we should be thinking about. And so this is we get to another thing that's called purchasing power parity. And purchasing power parity is trying to ask the question, okay, that's great, but how much would it cost you to buy this same stuff that you bought in Sydney? How much would that cost you in Bathurst, say? Or instead of buying it in Sydney, how much would it cost you to buy that same level of stuff in Solomon Islands? And what you'll tend to find is that there's significant differences. So what we also tend to do is we adjust for what's called PPP, purchasing power parity, between countries. And again, if you look at that Gapminder website, that's using purchasing power parity adjusted GDP figures. So again, it's like saying that if you took, you know, that $1,000 is meant to represent the same level of lifestyle in one place, like Australia, as another place, you know, how much would that same level of lifestyle cost you in the US, and also times. So we're adjusting for all those things.